So Hare Krishna devotees. So today's session, the topic is Isvara. The word Isvara in Sanskrit means controller. The word controller can be described in many ways. So if you look at me, you and me, in our tiny little planet called Earth, in a tiny little place called India, in a tiny little place called Bangalore or whichever city that you are in, you're joining us from. What are we trying to do? We are trying to control things. How are we trying to control things? We always want to be happy. Therefore, we try to manipulate things. When I use the word manipulate, I don't necessarily mean that in a negative way. In the sense, we're constantly making adjustments, trying to tweak this, trying to tweak that, just to see if we can be happy. And that happiness comes because we want to control the situation. We don't want anything to happen to us that will make us unpleasant or that will make our experiences unpleasant. So in that sense, we're always trying to control things. We want to control our destiny. We want to control our success. We want to control relationships, whether overtly or in a subtle way. We're trying to control relationships. We're trying to control people. We're trying to control nature. We're trying to control how fast we age. We're trying to control our strength by going to the gym to build our bodily strength. So in so many different ways, we are also Isvara. But you could say that we are Isvara with a lowercase I. So similarly, I'm sure all of you know that there are many, 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 many devatas. So you have a devata who controls fire, a devata who controls air, a devata who controls or oversees death. There are so many different devatas. In our scriptures, it is said there are 33 crore devatas. 33 crore devatas. They are also Ishvaras. How can we call them Ishvaras? Because they have their own portfolio. So for example, if you say that Saraswati Devi, her portfolio is education. Lakshmi Devi, her portfolio is prosperity. So these different devatas have their own departments that they run. So they are responsible. So Varuna is responsible for water. Vayu Dev is responsible for wind. So like this, they are also Ishvaras, but they are also limited. They can only control what portfolio that the Lord has given to them. So these 33 crore devatas are also human beings who have to go through the process of birth, death, old age, and disease. The only difference between them and us is that they live a much longer life. And also, generally, they do not grow old. They have a subtler body. They don't have as physical a form as we do. They have higher levels of intelligence.
Stop. Easy to
Uh,
relate to.
they have higher levels
Afternoon.
of power. But they are also Ishvaras with a lowercase I, in the sense that they've been given charge of something. And we also know Lord Shiva as Maheshwara. He has the title of Maheshwara because he is the father of the material universe, along with his consort Parvati Devi. So Lord Shiva has a particular title, role. So Parvati Devi and Lord Shiva are considered to be the universal mother and father. Universal means that which is in the material nature. But above them is Parameshwara, who controls both the spiritual worlds and the material worlds. This Parameshwara is often called either Lord Vishnu or Lord Krishna. So actually, in reality, it's Lord Krishna. So like this, you can see like a pyramid scheme. You know, if all the living entities and all the different planets were at the bottom, then higher and higher levels of consciousness, the pyramid gets narrower and narrower until at the very top there is only one person. And that one person is Lord Krishna. Lord Krishna says, he's Sarva Karana Karanam. Lord Krishna says he is the ultimate cause of all causes. Krishna repeatedly says in the Bhagavad Gita what his role is in this universe, both in the material universe and in the spiritual universe. He says to Arjuna, everything emanates from me. Every Jivatma is part and parcel of me. And he tells Arjuna, my energy is spread all over the universe, and it is there all over the spiritual universe and the material universe. So in tomorrow's sessions, we will discover there are two different types of homes that we have. One is called the material universe, one is called the spiritual universe. So all the liberated souls live in the spiritual universe. All the higher beings live in the upper planetary systems. So the devatas live in the heavenly planets. That's where their residence is. But as we mentioned, they have a very long life. And the calculation of their life is given in the scriptures. How long Lord Brahma lives is also given in the scriptures. Actually, the Lord references to Brahma's lifespan in the Bhagavad Gita twice. So all of this information is already given in our scriptures. So there should be no confusion as to who is God, as to who is the ultimate controller. The ultimate controller of everything that exists is the Supreme Lord Krishna. One of the Sanskrit words used to describe Lord Krishna is Asamaurdhva, meaning that there is nobody who is equal to or greater than Lord Krishna. I mean, he is the top of the food chain, if you can put it in very mundane language. There's nobody above him. He is the source of everything. So just like we are trying to control things and people all around us, including material nature, the reason we get this propensity to do it is because the Lord creates, the Lord maintains, and the Lord destroys. So we also, as tiny little Ishwaras, we create, we maintain, we destroy. In that sense, we are imitating our Father. You know, sometimes parents would have observed that if it is a young boy, he's trying to imitate his father, maybe trying to drive the car, trying to steer the steering wheel, or trying to get on the motorcycle and pretending that he's driving it. Similarly, if you look at a very young girl, she tries to imitate her mother. She wants to dress like her mother. She'll be in front of the mirror trying to put lipstick on. Most children, especially young girls, try to put their mother's slippers on and try to walk around. So children also imitate their parents. So similarly, because we are all the children of our Supreme Father, we are also trying to imitate our Father. We have the qualities that the Lord has. The Lord creates, we create. The Lord maintains, we maintain. The Lord destroys, we also destroy. But one big difference between the Supreme Lord and us. When the Lord creates, there is no effort required for him. And also there is no anxiety. But when we create anything, to create a cell phone or any object, whatever it is, it takes effort. It takes training. It may take skill. And it creates a lot of anxiety in us. The minute we create something or purchase something that has been created by somebody else, we get that sense of ownership. This is mine. And that mine gets you attached to it. Whereas when the Lord creates billions and billions and billions of universes, he is completely detached from it. So he can create and step away from his creation in the sense that he is not emotionally vested in his creation. Whereas because we are conditioned, because our consciousness is not elevated, we try to pretend that we own everything. So like this, we are also Isvara, but the difference is the Lord is the cause of everything, including us. So the term used in Sanskrit is Sarva Karana Karanam. That's Lord Krishna. He is the cause of all causes. He is the supreme controller, but he is not the sole controller. In the sense, the Lord gives you a little bit of freedom to control things, to try to control and manage things in your life. If you remember our slides from the session on karma, you would remember that the Lord gives you more freedom, the more obedient you are. The Lord will restrict your freedom, the less obedient you are. But the beauty of it is that an obedient child, even if you give them full freedom, they will not misuse it. It is the child who becomes disobedient that the parent tries to control more and more and more and more in order to protect them. Isn't it? So similarly, the Lord constrains our freedom the more we are disobedient to his laws, to his universal laws. How does the Lord constrain us? Through the consequences of the karmic reactions of our past activities. So just like a parent tries to discipline a child, the Lord is also seeking to discipline us when we step out of line. So let's just look at this step by step. In a mundane relationship, before we begin, let's just offer our most humble obeisances to His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Yes. Kindly put your name, phone number, and city in the chat because we are tracking attendance. It will help us a little bit. So if you've not already done so, kindly do it. And while you're there, we have posted a link for you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Kindly do that also. So in today's session, we are going to discuss who is God. One of the questions some of us may have is, does God really exist? You know, if God exists, why is he not doing anything about the sufferings? Why has he allowed millions and millions of people to die due to COVID? Why is he allowing this silly little war that's taking place between Russia and Ukraine? Why is there so much corruption? Why is the Lord allowing all these things to happen? So some of us may have that question. And there's a very fascinating person called Epicurus, a great Greek philosopher who believed in God, but he asked some interesting questions. We'll come to that slide in just a minute. Of how logic can actually trap your mind into believing nonsense. But anyway, very, sometimes we are so intelligent that we use that intelligence to reject logic also. So anyway, that is a part of our karmic reactions. So who is God? What is the meaning of the word Bhagavan? So we're going to look at how Parashara Muni defines the word Bhagavan. Parashara Muni is the father of Vedavyas. Vedavyas, Srila Vedavyas is the personality that wrote all the scriptures. Vedavyas is considered to be a literary incarnation of Lord Vishnu. So Lord Vishnu himself, one of his amshas, comes as Vedavyas to write the scriptures. So how do we get to see God? How do we get to experience him? Where can we learn more about him? So let's just look at it. I'm going to take a little mundane example, but hopefully it will help understand the process by which we begin to love somebody. So let us say there is a young man and a young girl, and the young man is attracted to this young girl. What is the first thing he wants to do? He wants to get to know more about her. So this trying to get knowledge about that girl, you can say is jnana. I'm just using mundane example, but I will come to the most significant meaning behind this. So when we see someone that we are attracted to, we want to get more information about them. It's natural because we're curious, we're inquisitive, and therefore we seek information. And then the next thing that happens is that after we are introduced to the person that we admire or love, we begin to think about that person endlessly. The more information we get, the more attracted we get. So think about this as dhyana. So we spoke of jnana, knowledge, and dhyana, starting to think about that person all the time. You can't forget them. You want to meet them again and again and again. And because your attraction for this person increases, what do you do? What does the young boy do? He tries to please the young girl. He tries to serve her. Let's call this karma, actions. for the purposes of pleasing that other person. And the more jnana that he gets, the more he meditates on this girl, the more he tries to serve her. And the more he does, it leads him to what we say in the material world as love, but technically it is lust. So this love then gets consummated in the form of a marriage. Because now he wants to have an exclusive relationship with that girl. So let us say this exclusive relationship is bhakti. I'm going to use the same example to explain how to understand the Supreme Lord. The only way to understand who is the Supreme Lord is to approach our scriptures and shastras to get more information or knowledge about him. Where does he live? How does he look like? What does he really do? What's his job? What makes him happy? So just like the young boy is trying to please the young girl by trying to figure out who is she, what is she, what does she like, what does she enjoy, we have to approach understanding the Supreme Lord in the same way. First, we want to get more information about him. The more we understand that he's such a great personality, we begin to think about him all the time. And when we think about him all the time, we are also trying to get closer to him by offering some services to him in the form of karma yoga, working for the Lord, until we reach the platform where we want him and nobody else. That is bhakti, the final stage. So in this way, one can approach the Lord through any one of these four paths. But ultimately, it is bhakti that is going to give you that complete success and satisfaction and bliss. So Jnana Yoga is trying to understand through the Vedic scriptures who is the Supreme Lord. Once you're convinced that he's the Supreme Lord, what do we try to do when we come across a powerful personality? We bow down, we offer our respects, we want to see how we can serve them. So similarly, once you're convinced that Krishna is the Supreme Lord, you're going to want to know, how can I serve him? How can I please him? This is Karma Yoga. And as you're engaged in Karma Yoga activities, the more you hear about him, the more you want to please him, and the more you are not able to forget him. So this, you could say, is Dhyana Yoga. Until finally, you have taken his shelter and all you want to do is serve him and nobody else, and that is Bhakti Yoga. So when we begin to practice Bhakti Yoga, we begin to attract the attention of the Supreme Lord. So let's get into the slides because I have a hard stop today. So let us see, who is Isvara? Isvara. Everybody talks about God. Those who believe in God will glorify him, praise him, and say there's nobody like Lord Shiva or nobody like Lord Vishnu, whoever you're worshipping. If you feel that particular deity has responded to your prayer, your attraction and desire to be attached to that deity increases. Your faith increases. And therefore, because you have faith in that deity, you are going to glorify the deity. But do you know, even those who don't believe in God are also talking about God all the time. How are they doing it? Oh, God is partial. God is a bad God. I don't need God in my life because I see all nonsense happening around me. I am a scientist. I want proof that God exists. And the worst kind of character is the one that says, I am God. There's nobody above me. Now that is utter foolishness. There can be only one Isvara who has created, who is maintaining, and who will ultimately destroy, and then recreate, maintain, destroy, and the cycle will go on. But the cycle of creation, maintenance, and destruction does not exist in the spiritual world. It's there only in the material world. So through the Bhagavad Gita, the Lord is tempting us by giving us knowledge about the spiritual world so that we are attracted to it and we make a plan to go back to it. So I was telling you all about this wonderful personality philosopher called Epicurus. This is from before the time period of Jesus Christ. So this is sometime in 300 BC. So Epicurus was a philosopher who believed in simple life and high thinking. And he felt that in society that God was playing an outsized role. People were so fascinated and so dedicated to serving God that they were not concerned about their own conduct and behavior. So he felt we need to reduce the presence of God in our personal lives, and human beings need to begin to focus on their own behavior, such that human beings must first learn not to cause distress to others, not to bring suffering unto others. And therefore, he propagated the philosophy that those who believe in God must live in a single community, spend time discussing philosophical matters, but lead a very bare minimum simple life. The objective was to rationally think about one's own conduct and behavior, and to learn, first of all, how to live in communion with oneself as well as with others. What was his goal? His goal was to reduce anxiety about, if I don't please God, God will punish me. And therefore, God needs to be feared. So why fear God? Why not just focus on working on ourselves, becoming a better human being so that we can reduce our anxieties? So he was propagating, working on the self. Now let's look at his questions. And this is why I said, sometimes logic is a dangerous thing. It leads you to the path of rejecting God. So his questions are as follows. If God is willing to prevent evil, but he's not able to do it, then God cannot be called omnipotent. And now he flips the question. He's saying, if the Lord is aware of evil and is able to prevent evil, but does not do anything to prevent evil, then he himself must be evil. Now he combines the two. If God is able and willing to prevent evil, how did evil even take birth? So where does evil come from? Why did God create evil? If he had the ability to prevent it, he had the will to prevent evil, Why does he allow evil to exist? Now, the final nail in the coffin here is, if God cannot do both, which is he cannot prevent evil and he's not able to also prevent evil, then why should we even call him God? So if you really pay attention to these questions, you may think, wow, these are really deep, intelligent questions. But what has it led to the conclusion? God must not exist. Although, by the way, Epicurus did believe in God. He did worship God. But look at the way the questions are phrased in such a way that if you only apply logic, you will come to the conclusion that God does not exist. This is the danger of trying to overthink things and think you are so intelligent and you know everything. Therefore, your logic leads you to the conclusion that I need proof that there is God. If there is God, there should be no suffering. Essentially, that's what that statement is saying. If God exists, there should be zero suffering. Well, that's silly. In every society, the government creates a set of regulations. The vast majority of the citizens are law-abiding and follow the regulations. There are some citizens who break the laws, and some of them break the laws, learn their lessons, and correct themselves. And some citizens break the laws, get repeatedly put in jail, and they don't learn their lesson. So the government does not create jails because it wants to. The government is forced to create jails when the citizens disobey the laws of the land. If every citizen obeyed the laws of the land, there is no need for a jail. Similarly, if every human being can simply obey the laws of the Lord, there is no need for a human being to suffer. So just like we cannot argue that the government likes to torture people and that's why it creates jails and arbitrarily throws people in it, similarly, we cannot believe the same thing of the Lord. The Lord is not here to torture you and me. We are responsible for our own actions. But let's look at, where do all our qualities come from? There are some very famous painters, very famous kings who have built huge monuments that are well known in the world. Famous scientists are there. Where are they getting their qualities from? So our creativity, our intelligence, our talent, our potency, everything comes from God. It exists in God and therefore it exists in us. That does not mean it exists in us equally. Some of us may be more talented in certain areas than others, and therefore some qualities of the Lord is present in all of us, but in very minute quantities. So we have come to know and to believe the love that God has for us. God is love, and whoever abides in love abides in God, and God abides in him. This is actually one of the Psalms from the Bible. So the Bible also talks about that when we learn to love everybody, we do that because we believe in the Supreme Lord. And when we exhibit this love for all of humanity, the Lord himself resides in us. It's not a complete understanding as per our scriptures, but you can get the basic gist that if you really claim that you believe in God and you love God, then automatically you should love all of God's creatures. Right? That should be the bottom line assumption. The same thing, great civilizations come and go. Where did they get all of this power from? How did they create all of this? So all of the raw materials that we use to create anything, whether it is a car or a house or a shoes or whatever, roads, boats, aircrafts, those materials were not created by us. So the raw materials that we use have been supplied to us by the Lord. We just use those raw materials to become secondary, actually tertiary creatives. The Lord first creates the material universes, and then Brahma creates the elements. He converts the raw energy that the Lord has created. And then after Brahma, all of the Jivatmas like you and me are the tertiary creators. So we use whatever Lord Brahma has created to make our lives comfortable here. So when Lord Vishnu creates, that process is called Sarga. He only creates the raw material, the universes. But the Jivatmas has to be created by Lord Brahma. So he is given the power by Lord Vishnu and the education and the knowledge on how to do that creation, how to create trees, bees, all these different permutations and combinations of life there is actually the bare necessities for that is actually created by Lord Brahma. And then we come, we inhabit this universe, and we are also trying to do the exact same thing. Because we have all of this material around us, we are also trying to create things. The minute we create, what do we need to do? We need to maintain it. So if I buy a BMW, I'm anxious. I have to pay the EMI, I have to pay the insurance. I want to make sure that I don't get into an accident. I want to polish it nicely. I want to maintain it nicely. So everything that we buy or we create, we try to maintain it. But due to the imposition of time, ultimately everything will get destroyed. So we do the same things that the Lord is doing: create, maintain, destroy, create, maintain, destroy. Why do we do it? Because the Lord does it. We are his children, so we have his qualities. It's as simple as that. But when we begin to think that we are the master and not the servant, that's when everything goes wrong in our life. That's when everything goes wrong in society. There is this beautiful story of Newton, a very famous mathematician, physicist. So one day, Newton had a very good friend. Newton believed in God, but his friend, who's also an equally intelligent scientist, did not believe in God. So as scientists, you are studying nature in and around you. You're studying phenomenons and other aspects in nature, because that's how you are learning, by applying the knowledge and testing things out. So Newton was a believer in God, but his friend was not. So one day, Newton had one of his other friends who was very good with creating mechanical objects. He had this friend create a replica of our galaxy with the planets and the sun and the moon, etc., in precise proportionate measurements to how the universe actually is. And it was created so beautifully that if you cranked the handle, the planets would move in their various orbits, the sun would be in the center. So everything would be in their different orbits. So it was a beautiful, innovative representation of our universe, of our galaxy. So this friend, who is an atheist, comes to visit Newton, and he sees this beautiful replica of our galaxy on the table. So he asks Newton, This is such a beautiful representation. What a phenomenal design. What perfection depiction of the universe. Tell me, who created this? And Newton said, nobody. So his friend said, come on. Don't make light of what I'm asking. Tell me, who made this actually? And Newton said, nobody made it. And his friend gets really annoyed and he says, come on, somebody obviously made it. It just didn't happen to come here on your table. And at that time, Newton tells his friend, this thing is but a puny imitation of much greater system, whose laws you know. And I am not able to convince you that this mere toy is without a designer and a maker. Yet you profess to believe that the great original from which the design is taken has come into being without either a designer or a maker. Now tell me, by what sort of reasoning do you reach such an incongruous conclusion? So Newton was asking his friend, when I tell you that this mechanical replica of the galaxy was not created by someone, you're not willing to believe me. You think I am a fool. But this design is being made based on the real thing that exists. But if that real thing exists and you are saying that real thing, there is no God behind it, where is this logic going? So like this, Newton defeats the argument or the belief system of another scientist. So nothing just comes out of the blue. Somebody has to create it. Therefore, the Lord is considered the supreme creator. So everything exists all around us because there's intelligence behind his creation. So we have to believe there is God. Nothing is an accident. If everything is an accident, there is no point in living at all. So Parashara Muni, the father of Srila Vyasadeva, defines Bhagavan as follows. Bhagavan is someone who's most powerful. He's most knowledgeable. He's most beautiful. He's most famous. He's most wealthy because everything belongs to him. And yet, even though he's the topmost, he's completely renounced. He's not attached to anything. So these are the 6 qualities that the Lord has in him, Lord Krishna has in him, unlimitedly. These same qualities we also exhibit every now and then. Some of us have very high IQ. Some of us become very powerful. Some of us become very famous. Some of us are very beautiful. But not a single human being has these 6 qualities together or unlimitedly. So when we say we are trying to imitate the Lord, we are simply imitating the Lord because we have his qualities. The difference is we do not have all of the qualities all of the time, and we do not have unlimited qualities of this nature. Our qualities are very, very minute compared to the Supreme Lord. So this is how Parashara Muni defines Bhagavan. How can you really see God? Our Shastras say you cannot see God with your physical eyes. You need to develop spiritual eyesight to see the Lord. So they say, great saints, great sages, they can see God in you because they see the Paramatma in you. So these great self-realized souls, they can see everything as it is because they see the Lord's hand in everything. So we should not worry about our physical eyesight. We should develop what is called the Jnana Chakshu, the eyesight of wisdom, the eyesight of spirituality to see the Supreme Lord. Our physical eyesight is limited and therefore cannot fully understand who is God. It's like this cartoon on the left. Somebody is trying to define an elephant. Let's say there are 5 blind men or 6 blind men, and they're asked to describe an elephant. And one person says, oh, elephant, it's like a big axe. Another one says, oh no, it's like a big rope. Somebody else is holding onto the leg and says the elephant is like a huge trunk. So you are only looking at one facet of the animal's body and claiming to know what that animal looks like. Similarly, we can barely see just a small percentage of this entire universal creation. We are like specks of dust. And as specks of dust, we are trying to understand with our limited intelligence and with our limited mental capacity, we are trying to understand who God is. It's not possible. Therefore, only when you study the scriptures, the Lord says we can actually understand him. And studying the scriptures, how? Under the guidance of a spiritual master. So why is logic not going to work when it comes to understanding who is the Supreme Lord? Our scriptures say that a human being has 4 defects. These 4 defects are listed here. One is we have a tendency to commit mistakes. None of us is perfect. We were not born perfect, and we're not going to die perfect. We will always make mistakes. And of course, the opportunity is there for us to learn from our mistakes, but sometimes we commit the same mistakes over and over again. The first flaw in us, or the defect in us, is that we don't get things right. The second is that we are subject to illusion. Anybody can fool us to accept untruth as truth and truth as untruth. It's happening in Kali Yuga. People believe all kinds of nonsense simply because a famous person said it, or a powerful person said it, or a very wealthy person said it, or a very influential person said it. They don't calculate, does this person really have knowledge? So we are easily subject to illusion. We have the propensity to cheat others. We are happy to lie to protect ourselves. And in the process, we are also cheating ourselves. And our senses are imperfect. We said in yesterday's class, our eyes are not perfect. Our concept of smell is limited compared to other jivatmas. So these are the 4 defects that the Shastras say that the human being has. And therefore, it's not possible for us to have a perfect understanding of who the Supreme Lord is. The Shastras also say that there are 3 ways in which we acquire knowledge. One is by what we see, by our direct perception. This is called Pratyaksha Praman. So you can see in that cartoon, if you're standing on this side, it is 6. If you're standing on that side, it is 9. So who is right and who's wrong? So this is called Pratyaksha Pramans. Therefore, it is not always reliable. It's not that we cannot learn through this process. We do learn, but this particular way of acquiring knowledge is incomplete. Another way in which we learn is through experimentation. This is called Anumana Pravan, or theory also based on our personal experiences, like seeing is believing, right? The third way to learn is what is called Shabda Praman, which is hearing from an authorized person. So if a teacher has studied physics and is teaching you physics in class, they have qualified themselves to teach you physics. We always learn by hearing. Doesn't matter whether you go to a physical school or a digital school, somebody is teaching. So hearing is such an important aspect of us learning. So think about it. As you are an infant, your mother will point things to you and tell you, This is a table, that is a light, this is the switch, this is the gas, this is a knife, this is your father, this is your brother. There are a lot of things that we learn simply by hearing. And we never challenge our parents when they are teaching us. If they tell you it's a table, you accept it's a table. You are not going to grow up and start doing research and say, no, my mother told me this is a table. How can it be a table? Let me decide and figure out for myself whether this is a table or not. Like this, there are a lot of things we learn simply because an authority has told you this is what it is. Therefore, you don't waste your time trying to experiment. So our Shastras say of these three ways of acquiring knowledge, the topmost way of acquiring knowledge is Shabda Praman. That's the best way to acquire knowledge. Now in Kali Yuga, this may be a dangerous principle, but let's look at it a little bit deeper. The question is, we know that seeing is not always believing because there is illusion of our senses. So Pratyaksha Praman, we do learn things through Pratyaksha Praman. It's not that it should be rejected. It just cannot be used to understand who the Supreme Lord is. Then Anumana Praman, theory based on evidence. Now Darwin was a scientist. He one day was researching the human eye, or just an eye, and he was marveling at the design of how the eye functions. And he says, it's beyond my capacity to understand how this particular mechanical object was created, that it can never be replicated by a human being. So sometimes you observe things and learn, but that observation may also not be complete. But hearing from authorities is considered to be most perfect. But the critical word here for us is we have to learn from a bona fide authority. There are a lot of people in Kali Yuga who claim that they are authorities on scriptures. We have to use our intelligence to decide and determine whether they are genuine teachers. So scriptures must be learned from bona fide gurus, right? So Srila Prabhupada says we can speculate for many births, for many years, and yet not be able to understand the ultimate goal of life. Therefore, all the Shastras advise us that we search out a guru. In chapter 4, Krishna talks about the importance of having a guru in one's life. In chapter 13, again, Krishna talks about the importance of accepting a guru. Guru means guru has a guru, that guru has a guru, that guru has a guru. Like this, there has to be a chain of succession. In our culture, we have 4 sampradayas that the Lord himself establishes for the purposes of worship of Krishna or Lord Vishnu. So Krishna has 4 primary devotees who are his devotee and disciple. One is Lord Brahma. So one Vaishnava Parampara comes from Lord Brahma. Krishna's other devotee is Lord Shiva. So although in India the Shaivism is predominant, Lord Shiva himself worships Lord Vishnu. So that's the second Vaishnava Parampara. Then Lord Vishnu also teaches this, Lord Narayana teaches this knowledge to Lakshmi Devi. So Lakshmi Devi is the head of one more Vaishnava Parampara. And then Lord Brahma had 4 sons called the Sanat Kumaras. The Lord also teaches them the scriptures and reveals that he is the Supreme Lord to them. So there are 4 Vaishnava Paramparas as per Vedic culture. One is the Brahma Sampradaya, the Rudra Sampradaya, the Shri Sampradaya, and then the Sanat Kumara Sampradaya. So every one of these sampradayas has direct connection to Lord Krishna. So ISKCON comes under the Brahma Sampradaya. Brahma in turn teaches this to Narada Muni. Narada Muni teaches it to Vyasadeva. Vyasadeva eventually teaches this principles to Madhvacharya. And from Madhvacharya on down, it comes to ISKCON. So in between, there is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, who is again the Kali Yuga incarnation of Lord Krishna. So from him propagates the Bhakti movement that was established around 500 years ago. So this parampara of ISKCON is linked to Lord Brahma. So what is the difference between God and the Devatas? The Lord explains that in the Bhagavad Gita. What is the Lord's strength and power? Where does he live? How can you approach him? All of this is explained in the Bhagavad Gita. If we know that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Lord, what does he want us to do? What does the Lord want you to do? That is also explained by the Lord in the Bhagavad Gita. So the Lord explains his position and our position as Jivatma and what is our duty and responsibility to him. All of this is covered in the Bhagavad Gita. Right? So we'll come to the final 2 slides and then maybe we can take questions for 10 minutes. There are some interesting sayings about the Supreme Lord that I picked up from Google. God doesn't want you serving him only because you're supposed to. He wants you serving him because you actually love him. Although there is nothing wrong if we want to serve the Supreme Lord out of a sense of duty and responsibility, that is certainly a good start. But the Lord prefers that you serve him because you love him. Just because you can't see the air doesn't mean you stop breathing. And just because you can't see God doesn't mean you stop believing. God doesn't want to take your money. He just doesn't want your money to take you away from him. The one on the right is a little bit more deeper. God doesn't call the qualified. He qualifies the called. What does that mean? The deeper meaning behind this is that in order for you to go back to the spiritual world, the Lord himself gets you ready to enter the spiritual world. He does not expect you to get ready all by yourself. And then when you're ready, he calls you. No. In order to go back to the spiritual world, you need the Lord's help. You need the Lord's mercy. So he qualifies the called. That's what that means. He gives you the strength, the power, the qualities. Once you've expressed your genuine desire and affection to the Lord, then he takes care of you. He cleans you up, he prepares you, and he gets you on that flight back to the spiritual world. You don't have to worry about it. But your endeavor has to be there. Nothing can happen in life without endeavor. When the Lord sees your sincere endeavor, he will come into your life and change things dramatically for you. So God doesn't call the qualified, which means you don't have to become pure first to enter the spiritual world. You have to learn to love the Supreme Lord, and He Himself will make you pure to enter the spiritual world. Because you on your own cannot become pure, not without the Lord's help. That's what that last picture is actually saying. God doesn't expect us to solve all the world's problems. He expects us not to create them. The irony is that while God doesn't need us, but still wants us, we desperately need God, but don't really want Him most of the time. In other words, the Lord loves you so much, He wants you back. We oftentimes don't care for God, although we really need Him in our life. The Lord doesn't need us. You know? So let us just say that a father has 10 children. One child is disobedient, 9 children are obedient. That's like the Supreme Lord. Most of the Jivatmas are there with Him in the spiritual world. It's a very small percentage that has been disobedient and come into this material world. Just like in every society, the vast majority of the population is free. There is a small percentage of population that is sitting in jail. So the number of Jivatmas occupying the material universe is very, very insignificant compared to the number of Jivatmas that live freely in the spiritual world. So we said that God is the supreme controller, but not the sole controller. He is not the sole controller because He has given you a little bit of freedom to decide the trajectory of your own life. So, but in order to understand deeper about this particular topic, you need to attend the advanced Bhagavad Gita classes. So you can certainly sign up for our advanced Bhagavad Gita classes, which we will start shortly. Tomorrow is our last session on Isvara, on Prakriti and Kala. So please do join us. Thank you very much for joining today's session. I will stay back for 10 minutes to take any questions. Thank you.